Hey guys, before we begin with today's video, I think it's important that we talk about something. It's an elephant in the room that I feel needs to be addressed, so let's just get it out of the way so we can move forward. I know what you're probably wondering, and yes, it's true. I fucking love pirates! Yo! I love everything about pirates. I love their ships. I love their history. I love realistic depictions of pirates. I love unrealistic depictions of pirates. I love pirate movies. I love pirate books. I love pirate video games. I love pirates who sail the seas. I love pirates who sail the skies. And most appropriately today, I love pirates who sail the stars. Basically, if a game promises me that I get to be a pirate of any kind, I'm already sold. So forget Rogue Galaxy having me at hello, it had me at I genuinely believe this is a game that does not get enough love and attention. I've seen very few people actually mention this game, let alone talk about it in much detail. This game was originally meant to be a flagship for an entire series. One with the breadth and scope large enough to rival other RPGs like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. Unfortunately, while it was relatively well received when it first came out, it did not click with popular culture and did not sell well, so Sony squashed any future ambition of a franchise. Which is a damn shame, because it's fucking pirates! In space! What's not to love? I can think of very few games in my collection that I wish had gotten a sequel more than this one, because it has a ton of potential. But maybe the reason it didn't quite catch on with an audience is the same reason why it's taken me over a year and several drafts of this script to finally get this video made. There's a lot to love here, but it can make it a little difficult to focus on those things when there's also a lot holding it back. For those of you who have never heard of this game, or never played it, and I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that's most of you, here's the pitch. You play as Jaster Rogue, a young orphan who grew up on the streets of a desert planet who dreams of seeing the stars. One day, after receiving a sword that used to belong to his father from a mysterious hooded man, he meets a British robot and his shorter, funny companion. They then set off on an adventure across the stars to take down an evil empire. If this sounds familiar to you, congratulations! You've seen Star Wars. I know it's a little unfair to compare it to Star Wars, considering Star Wars is basically the poster child for the hero's journey, so you could easily make that argument for a lot of things. But trust me when I say that the plot is basically Star Wars with space pirates. I know that I've basically already sold a lot of you with that, but we'll talk more about the comparisons later on in the video when we dissect the story. But for now, I'd like to discuss the gameplay. The things that work, the things that don't, and the things that really don't. In order to fully understand the combat of Rogue Galaxy, I'm going to need to introduce you to your new best friend. Viewer, meet Triangle Button. Triangle Button, meet Viewer. The Triangle Button will be guiding you throughout this entire game. The Triangle Button is good. The Triangle Button is life. You'll be pressing other buttons, of course. X is your melee attack, square is ranged attack, circle is jump, R1 is block, but it's the triangle button that you're going to be utilizing the most, as the triangle button pulls up your menu. The menu pauses the battle, and it is where you will pick your abilities and items. Every time you use something on the menu, or every time you attack, you will be depleting part of your action gauge. Once your action gauge depletes, you must then wait for it to fully recharge before you can do anything else. However, if you get attacked while you block, your action gauge fully replenishes. I understand what this mechanic is trying to do. It's trying to prevent you from just spamming attacks, make you plan out your battles, and strategically use your resources wisely in an action-focused setting. There's just a couple of issues with it. One, your block only refills your bar if it's already been depleted and it's already in the process of refilling. So it's less a matter of careful timing and more a matter of attacking relentlessly and then turtling up until your action gauge refills one way or the other, at which point you can start breaking your X button again. 2, your abilities come in a variety of uses. They can buff you, do damage, give your attacks an elemental affinity, etc, etc. But after picking an ability, every single time a short cutscene will play demonstrating the party member using that ability. It's cute at first, but it will not take you long before you are mashing that skip button like a jackhammer. The game tries to be a mix of a bunch of different styles without actually coming together to make anything unique or even cohesive. It wants to be a turn-based menu RPG, it wants to be an action game, it wants to be strategic, but all it ends up being is a game with a combat system that has more stops and starts than an Atlanta highway. You have to stop and use a potion, you have to stop when the action gauge is empty, you have to stop when you use a potion, you have to stop and use an ability, you have to stop when you use a potion, you have to stop when you use a potion, you have to stop when you use a potion, you have to stop when you use a potion, you have to stop when you use a lot of potions. Am I making that clear? I feel like I need to hold an intervention with the player characters with how many potions they all drink. I'm not exaggerating when I say that the majority of the money I spend on shops in the game is to make sure that I always have the max amount of potions on hand at any given time. Now, I think they handle the potions themselves really well. The regular potion heals 50% of your max HP, and the stronger potion heals all of it. Unless I'm blind or stupid, no characters have any healing abilities, so these potions are the only means of keeping yourself alive. And considering the game pauses every time you open up the menu, there is no downside to pausing the game then setting up an IV drip. For some of the stronger boss fights, it often becomes a battle of attrition to see which runs out first, the enemy's health or your stock. Between the lack of mobility and being able to pause time to shotgun healing potions, a lot of fights end up the same way. Attack, get knocked down, take a potion, attack, run out of action points, block, and cross your fingers that the enemy doesn't have an attack that will one-shot you before you get a chance to heal yourself. The game does attempt to mix up the combat from time to time with enemy variety. Some enemies require specific types of weapons to be used against them, or some require being attacked from higher up. That aspect of the combat is most definitely appreciated. To further try and mix up the combat a little, you also have the option of controlling other party members who all have unique types of weapons and styles of play. Basically, the way it works is you switch to another party member, realize they suck, and then you switch back to Jaster. It's a pretty easy system. All of these frustrations get ramped up to 11 whenever the game wants you to participate in a one-on-one boss fight. One-on-one fights are an actual nightmare. Let's be 100% honest with ourselves, unless you're the type of person to fine-tune each individual twitch of a party member's left pinky, you're more than likely leaving the party AI to their own devices. Rogue Galaxy actually does more than most, where the party will act of their own accord, but will ask you if they can use specific abilities or items if the situation calls for it. But the real reason we have a party is to distract enemies and absorb hits, which allow you to get your hits in and give you a minute to breathe and heal yourself if needed. But in one-on-one boss fights, that's not the case. You'll be lucky if the boss doesn't have a move that can take out a majority of your health in one hit. Except they will. Every time. It's supposed to feel like a epic clash between two rivals to figure out once and for all who is the strongest fighter. Except there's no question. They are. Every time. It doesn't matter who you're fighting, if you're fighting one character against a boss, the decks are so stacked against you it's not even funny. They will knock you down so many times your name legally changes to Frodo Baggins. And then my frustrations go way past 11 if it's a fight that forces you to use a character other than Jaster. Because at least before, you were playing with a deck you knew. Now you're having to learn how an entire new character plays while getting mercilessly beat down. A particularly egregious example is later on in the game, which we will get to. Now, some of you may be saying, well, if you're having that much difficulty, maybe you should try grinding levels. Oh, you sweet summer child, how I envy your ignorance. You will be doing nothing but grinding for the whole game. Though I do want to give focus to an aspect of this game that I actually really like. My hatred of grinding in games is well documented, but my love of in-universe reasons to do side quests is also well documented. Near the beginning of the game, you are officially entered into the leaderboard of the galaxy's greatest bounty hunters, and by taking down a certain number of certain types of monsters, and by accepting contracts to hunt down boss monsters, you'll rise in the ranks. At certain rank thresholds, you'll be rewarded with items. You will, unfortunately, run into the scenario in which you just need 4 more of a specific monster, and you're running around, and the RNG is refusing to give you an encounter with that monster. Eventually it will, but then that encounter will only have 3, so you have to search some more. But regardless, I very much appreciate that the game actually gives you a legit reason to grind. I just wish I felt a more substantial difference in power from that grind. In most RPGs, you grind so that you can get ahead and make combat easier. In Rogue Galaxy, however, you don't grind to get stronger, you grind so that you'll have enough HP to tank a hit so you can take another health potion. You'd think fighting enough monsters to get to the top of the leaderboard would be enough, but unfortunately, even the galaxy's #1 bounty hunter has difficulty with common enemies. Apparently, no matter how freaking sweet his new outfit he unlocked is. Even in the final dungeon, while being around level 60, I was still keeping up my pain med addiction just to laboriously crawl my way through it. Of course, just leveling up isn't the only way you're expected to improve. There's also the Revelation Board, a separate system where you use items that you find throughout the world, either at stores, dropped by monsters, or found in chests, and they will unlock prerequisites to obtain new abilities, stat boosts, and combo attacks. Though, again, even when you almost completely have it filled out, like I did, it's only going to help so much. Weapons also have their own separate level up system. As you fight with a specific weapon, you become more and more proficient with it. At a certain point in the game, you meet someone named Toady. This little abomination of nature will take 2 weapons that have been maxed out and combine them into an even more powerful weapon. There's also several power gems that he can combine into your weapons to give them specific attributes and stat buffs. It's actually the most consistent and cheapest way to get new and improved gear, and I relied on him a lot. Don't ask why he's a talking purple amphibian with a single tuft of blonde hair though, I just work here. Speaking of acquiring new items, you can also unlock a factory that you can utilize. You can use materials that you find throughout the galaxy to create new parts of machines. By using specific factory parts in specific orders, you can create various items and equipment that can then be purchased in stores. At least, according to the Wikipedia page. I never touched the thing because Toady was useful enough for me. But if you enjoy the complexity of that system, I can definitely see someone spending hours doing that. If you're looking for a game that offers plenty of side content to spend your time on, your cup runneth over. For instance, there's an entire side game called Insectron. You'll receive a cage that will allow you to capture bugs. You place bait in the cage and place it somewhere in the galaxy. You then come back and depending on what bait you used and where you placed it, it will determine your bug. And depending on how you feed it and train it, it will determine its stats. You can then take it to the Insectron Stadium and have it compete with other bugs in order to win prizes. It's pretty cool. I mean, I didn't do this either, but you know, it sounds cool. I also didn't do the chows in Sonic Adventure, but it seems like a similar concept. If I haven't scared you away yet and you are still interested in playing this game, back out now if you care about spoilers. I know it may not sound like it with everything I've said so far, but I actually do recommend this game. Or at the very least, watching a Let's Play of it. The story, well, not exactly BAFTA-worthy, is very fun and enjoyable, if not incredibly riffable, which is its own kind of fun. If you need to skip to the end for my final thoughts, go here. Now, about that Star Wars comparison. Stop me if you've heard this one. While traveling through the stars, Jaster is joined by the comedic duo mentioned before, a princess with swirls on her head, a rogue who's out for his own gain, a big hairy guy who's the muscle of the team, a conniving individual who starts out as an antagonist but manages to redeem himself, and a hot bikini-clad archer who has left her people and beliefs behind in order to have a better understanding of the universe. Okay, I'll give a point to Rogue Galaxy for that last one. A point that is immediately taken away when you meet the robed antagonist flying around in a ship called the Emperor, and his main attack dog, who is artificially created and wears an expressionless mask. Luckily, the Star Wars parallels aren't too extensive beyond the characters and the intro level, but it is kind of difficult to ignore. We start out on the planet Rosa. You know, the desert planet. The planet that's covered entirely in desert. The planet that has absolutely no biomes whatsoever other than an arid desert. Yeah, that planet. It's here that Jaster makes a meager living hunting small fry monsters while trying to support his adoptive father, Raoul. But Jaster dreams of leaving this backwater town. I want adventure in the great wide somewhere. But he's not going anywhere anytime soon because there's a curfew on the town due to the war between the Longardian Federation and the Draxilian Empire. Remember that war, it'll be super relevant later. Due to this martial law, in order for Jaster to leave his home, it would require a call to action of some kind. But where could he ever find one of those?
What the? Seems I spoke too soon. There's a beast in town. A pretty big one by the looks of it.
Oh, hey look! A call to action of some kind. Jaster goes to protect his town and fight the big monster, but he's got to cut his way through the smaller monsters which begin to overwhelm him. Luckily, he's rescued by a mysterious hooded man. You find out pretty quickly that he's a bounty hunter known as Desert Claw, and he's the galaxy's top hunter. He can't stay long, but before he goes, he gives Jaster his sword. It's one of the 7 legendary swords hidden throughout the galaxy. It contains more power than you can possibly imagine, and definitely not normal starting weapon stats that will almost immediately be replaced as soon as I get a new sword. It's this sword that makes Steve and Simon mistake Jaster for being Desert Claw and ask him to follow them back to their ship. But Jaster's not going anywhere until his town is safe. With the help of Steve, Simon, and some really shitty platforming, Jaster manages to take down the big beastie. Steve and Simon offer to recruit Jaster to join their pirate crew aboard the ship the Dorganark, which Jaster obviously accepts. Before he leaves, Raoul says goodbye to Jaster, saying how he always thought of him as his own son, and how Raoul will always be here if Jaster ever wishes to return home. He expresses just how proud he is of his boy. So, how many red death flags do you count? Because I count about 50. Jaster heads out into the desert, but before he can reach the ship, he is attacked. I know there's a Dune reference to be made here, but I've never seen or read Dune, so this is the best you're getting.
Then Alaskan forward!
What do you want from me? You're rescued and brought into the ship where you meet the rest of the crew. Kasala, the obvious love interest who has no actual romantic chemistry with our protagonist, Zegram, the roguish, rivalish character with a checkered past who will definitely be betraying us at some point, and first mate Monsha, whom I'm fairly certain we're supposed to hate, so good job, writers. Just in case Jaster isn't having any regrets joining a crew whose second in command is a fucking cat, the ship immediately runs out of fuel and crashes onto a nearby planet. By quite literally astronomical luck, the planet that we've landed on contains fruit that is used to make starship fuel. This planet is called Juraika. You know, the jungle planet. The planet that's covered entirely in jungles. The planet that has absolutely no biomes whatsoever other than a humid jungle. Yeah, that planet. It's on Juraika that we are introduced to Lilica, whose sister has been chosen to be sacrificed to the star god her people worship. But Jaster and Kasala don't like that, and as complete outsiders, it's our job to trespass and interfere in a culture we do not understand and push our own beliefs onto them. Cause you know what they say, when in Rome, fuck 'em.
Leave them alone. It ain't our place to butt in. Let them deal with this problem on their own.
But we just can't stand by and let this happen. We have to stop them.
Lilica manages to fight a shit ton of giant spiders, climb up a raging waterfall, swim through a river that is definitely riddled with diseases to get to the altar of the star god, all while guiding a blind girl. Glad she's gonna be joining my team soon. All she needs is some motivation. Hey, giant spider monster who killed her mom and is about to kill her sister, do you think you could help out with that?
This is the true form of our precious star god. You took my mother. You took everyone!
Appreciate it. For defying the star god, Lilica is banished from her village. But it's not so subtly implied that the real reason for her banishment is to explore other worlds and bring back news about what the galaxy is like to her people. Zegram, not getting involved in other cultures' sacred rites, actually did what they were supposed to be doing and got the fire fruit so they can finally take off. And where are they going? Why, to the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, Zerard! You know, the city planet. The planet that's covered entirely in one big city. The planet that has absolutely no biomes whatsoever other than a bustling city. Yeah, that planet. We must go there in order to renew our galactic travel visa. Otherwise, it's illegal to dock on any planets. Which I imagine would be a really big issue for people who aren't pirates, so I'm not entirely sure why we care. Jaster is given the mission to renew the visa because, I mean, of course he is, look at him. He's the main character. Lilica decides to come along so she can see the most advanced planet in the galaxy up close. And Simon is coming along because he was born and raised on Zerard, which means he'll be a great guide. Which checks out, because if I was part of an intergalactic crew when we decided to visit Earth and we landed in Brazil, I'd definitely be able to show people around. After all, I was born and raised on Earth. We head to the Galaxy Corporation, and after a misunderstanding, we are thrown in jail. Which was inevitable, quite frankly. I'm honestly struggling to remember a single RPG I've ever played in which I didn't have to break out of a prison at some point. We are introduced to the warden of Rosencaster Prison, and he says the most realistic thing I think I've heard in this game so far.
It doesn't matter anymore. You could be innocent or guilty. It means nothing to me. The only thing that's important is that you're here now.
Luckily, they threw us in here with all of our swords, guns, and a goddamn flamethrower, so it doesn't take long for us to break out. While traveling through Rosencaster Prison, we come across some of the Warden's lab experiments. The game tries to make the Warden seem sympathetic and give him a tragic backstory for some reason. You can try your best to make me feel sad about how his former lover has died and he's trying to bring her back to life, but the dude looks like the love child of Frankenstein and an uglier Frankenstein, and has tortured and killed several dozen prisoners in his experiments. So, like, I don't really feel bad for him. Speaking of his lover though, man, did she settle hard. When we stumble onto the Warden's main lab, it's revealed to us that the Warden has been experimenting with Rune. Not Rune! Anything but Rune! What's Rune? Rosencaster attacks, we kick his ass, and escape. Before returning to the Galaxy Corporation, Simon comes down with a case of tragic backstory and asks to switch out with Steve. Unfortunately, we still can't renew our travel visa as the nearby Datron factory is being held hostage by an unknown terrorist. Why this is relevant to us, considering Datron and Galaxy Corp are two different companies, I don't know, but since, once again, the cops are as useless in this game as they are in real life, we have to go and liberate the building. The terrorist's name is Jupus Tuki, which is unfortunate, and he's taken over the entire robotics factory and turned all the robots within against us. But we managed to fight our way through and confront Jupus. After giving him a swirly and shoving him in a locker, Jupus reveals his incredibly sad and tragic backstory. He was fired from his job. Truly, there was never a tale of more woe. Shockingly, the cops still try to arrest him, even knowing everything he's gone through, but he manages to escape capture by using a smoke bomb, and we'll never see him again. Oh, fuck.
Now this is a good-looking ship. I like it, I like it!
Hey, what are you doing here?
I'll be on the most wanted list before long, right? My house is surrounded by soldiers. I have nowhere to hide. So I decided to become a crew member here till things die down.
Oh yeah, says who?
Says me, that's who. Jupus is a vital part of the Dorganark team. This is good. This is great.
So he bribed you.
So yeah, Jupus is part of our party now. Hooray for us, I guess. Suppose we could always use more target practice. Shortly after this is when we finally get to meet the captain of the Dorganark, Captain Dorgan Goa. He's understandably a bit miffed when he expects to see a grizzled, badass bounty hunter from the stars and instead just gets this space twink. Dorgan Goa is ready to throw him overboard, which would be something to see in space, but Kasala, Simon, and Steve all stick up for him and explain how he's been a valuable part of the team while he's been asleep. And Dorgan Goa says that Jaster must prove himself on this upcoming mission if he wants to stay on the crew. The two complete strangers, one of whom is a known terrorist who bribed his way onto the ship, are apparently free to stay. The captain tells his crew that his goal is to find the legendary planet Eden, which is said to contain untold amounts of treasure. The crew is, of course, confused by this plan, as no one has seen or heard from Eden in thousands upon thousands of years, and most people don't even believe it exists. It's like Atlantis, or affordable housing, or my self-esteem. The only way to find it is to find these ancient tablets that apparently show a map to Eden. Our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to go to the planet Vidam to find and retrieve one of these tablets. If we refuse to accept it, I don't know, I guess we can turn the console off and go outside? Ugh, fuck that. Kasala goes with you to get the tablet on Vidam. You know, the mining planet. The planet that is covered entirely in one big mining town. The planet that has absolutely no biomes whatsoever other than dusty mountains and caves. Yeah, that planet. It's here that Rogue Galaxy fumbles the ball a bit and wastes an opportunity. In the tutorial level, we have Simon and Steve as our party members. We then go to the first real level and our party switches to Kasala and Zegram, at which point we recruit Lilica. To flesh her out, we then go to the next planet and have Lilica in our party, and our third is rotated with the two characters who were stuck in the tutorial. So we get a good amount of time with each of them and get to know them. But then we go to the new planet and we are stuck with Kasala, despite the fact that we just recently recruited Jupus. Jupus never gets an opportunity to be in the spotlight. I'm picturing a scene where, in addition to sending Jaster, he also sends Jupus because he's not swayed by his bribes, but is fine with Lilica because he finds her attractive so she can stay on the ship no matter what. Giving you a chance to get to know Jupus and find that he's not such a bad guy. But as it is, we're never forced to have Jupus in our party. After Vidan, you choose whoever's in your party, so you can, conceivably, permanently bench him. It just feels like a missed opportunity, and it feels odd that he's the only character that's the case for. Upon arriving in town, we find out about a place called Angela's Bar, where all the miners go to relax. Which is weird, because I figured a bar wouldn't allow miners to enter. It's at Angela's Bar where we're introduced to Digo, or as he's known on the streets, Dog Daddy Digo. I'm Streets, I'm the only one who calls him that. Incidentally, I feel like this game should be more popular among furries. We are also introduced to Gale, a mobster who used to be Digo's best friend and war buddy. They fought long and hard in the war between Longardia and Draxia, until Gale casually committed some war crimes. Remember that war, it'll be super relevant. The local mafia has a deal with Datron to get them the tablet they need for the Rosa Ruins. We head down into the mines to stop the handoff, at which point we have a boss fight with
Gale!
The fight with Gale has two stages. One, where he's in a giant mining mech and we all take him down together, and then a fight against Gale himself, at which point Digo decides to go all lone wolf on us and fight him one-on-one. Remember when I said earlier there is a particularly egregious example of all the problems with one-on-one boss fights in the game? Meet the egregious example. The main problem is that not only do we have the usual frustrations with one-on-one fights, but we're also fighting with Digo, a character we just acquired as a party member who has about 2 abilities to his name and hasn't had as much chance to grind as the rest of the party. If you Google Rogue Galaxy Gale fight, you'll get a bunch of people talking about how much this fight fucking sucks. Unfortunately, Gale manages to buy the mob enough time to hand off to Datron, and they take the tablet away. We head back to Angela's bar and find out that Angela isn't there. She has decided to leave town, but Digo runs after her and has a classic catch them before they get on the plane scene. They just mean so much to each other, and now that he's convinced her to stay, he promises to never let her go. Anyway, gonna go join up with Space Pirates, bye! Since Datron has taken the tablet back to the Rosa Ruins, we follow in hot pursuit. Datron is run by a man named Valcog, a slimy businessman who profiteers from the war between Longardia and Draxia, and has ambitions to become Emperor of the Galaxy. Remember that war, it'll be super. When he arrives on Rosa and the tablets are placed down next to each other, they reveal the hints to the locations of the 3 keys to Eden. We try to stealthily watch from a distance, but our cover is blown, and we are forced to fight their synthetically created super soldier named Seed. He's what we in the business like to refer to as a supposed-to-lose fight. The game needs to show just how powerful of an enemy he is, so that when we fight him later, we'll have the benchmark of how far we've come when we do defeat him. Those moments are typically incredibly satisfying in games. Is it just as satisfying here? Anyway, Desert Claw manages to intervene and get us out of there. When we get back to the Dorgan Arc, we learn what the 3 hints mean: a crab, a lion, and scales. This is when we find out about ruins on 3 different planets, all belonging to 3 different ancient kingdoms. The ruins of the Cancer King, the Leo King, and the Gladius Towers. They're located on Vidan, Jaraika, and Zerard, respectively. What are the odds? You're allowed to go in any order you wish, and I see no reason why I should go in a different order than I went to the planets originally, so hey, let's go to Jaraika first. I would say that this is where the game opens up a bit. You can go anywhere and pick your party of choice. And it's worth noting that who you have in your party does not influence who appears in story cutscenes. However, I would also argue that it becomes more formulaic from a story perspective. You arrive at a ruin, run into an archaeologist named Burton, he annoys you, you encounter Seed, fight a boss at the end that just becomes a battle of attrition, and walk away with a key piece. Though I would recommend learning from my mistakes, the final boss on Vidan is way easier than the others. Start with that one. To the absolute shock of everyone who wasn't paying attention, Zegram betrays the crew and makes off with the key pieces. Dorgangoa is upset that someone would dare betray the king of the pirates. Although, given that we have yet to meet any other pirates, that's kind of like saying you're the king of the hand lotion eaters. Like, good for you, but who's your competition? It seems Zegrim betrayed us as part of his deal with Datron to bring back his dead girlfriend. But Zegrim calls out their rebirth program that he saw at the prison on Zerard, as it wasn't being used to bring people back from the dead, they're just using Rune in order to turn people into monsters. And I'm sure they'll explain what the hell Rune is any minute now. Since it's obvious that Zegrim isn't going to be cooperating with Datron either, Valcog brings in Seed. Shockingly, this 1v1 fight with a character I never use goes the exact same way as all the other fights we've had with this guy. We crash the party and oh gosh, wouldn't you know it, we're still not expected to win this fight. We need to put the key pieces on the pedestals while Zegrim and Kassala hold off Seed. Once they're in place, an enormous structure appears out of the tablets, a puzzle that must be solved. And it seems that Seed was created specifically for this reason.
Seed has powers we normal humans lack.
This motherfucker's supposed to be human? Seed fails to unlock the gate to Eden and is cast aside by Valcog. To prove that he's not useless, he turns into a giant, muscly centaur, which we all do when we're trying to earn our father's love. There's no getting around this. This fight sucks. It honestly might be one of, if not the worst fight in the game. Through the unstoppable power of doing a keg stand with health potions, I was able to pretty handedly fight him and I was very clearly winning. But then, for some stupid reason, it becomes a one-on-one fight. And despite what the cutscene before this fight might suggest, no, Jaster is not the legendary Super Saiyan, and this fight just became about 10 times harder and more frustrating. I just keep jumping up to hit him once or twice, and then he immediately knocks me back down. Then I have to take a potion. Lather, rinse, consider suicide, repeat. It should go without saying, but this fight was super disappointing. Seed's been built up for half the game as a foil to Jaster, and a force to be reckoned with. I was hoping for a Dante-Virgil fight. Instead, I get whatever the hell this is supposed to be. After Seed crumbles to dust, sure, Jaster walks over and solves the puzzle and opens the gate in just a couple of seconds.
What, like it's hard?
Turns out, Jaster is the descendant of the Star King. Don't worry if it feels like you've never heard that name before, because you haven't. On the one hand, I really like that Rogue Galaxy's world has enough lore to it that you could probably make an entire tabletop RPG sourcebook for it. On the other hand, it does kind of feel like every plot twist is a different and new Deus Ex Machina that the writers just pulled entirely out of their ass. We decide to welcome Zegrim back to the crew since he was deceived by Datron. Together, we venture down into the Rosa ruins and encounter a robot that seems to recognize Kassala, and then attacks. The boss is going pretty well as any other boss fight. I'm keeping up with my potions and... or not. Guess I'll go grind. Fucking again. Once you find a speech module for the robot so it can communicate in more than just insta-kill moves, it reveals that Kassala is actually the princess of the long-lost kingdom of Mariglen, located on Eden. I'm telling you, the head spirals were a dead giveaway. We are given the key to the gate to Eden. Even though I could have sworn they said this was the gate to Eden, but oh well, and we're sent on our way. Valcog attacks the town in an attempt to get Jaster to hand over the key, but Raoul comes in with the save and activates an electromagnetic wave to fuck with the ship. To fuck with every part of the ship, except for the cannons, apparently. Gotta hand it to Raoul. Not only did he not get turned into fucking paste after getting shot at by a cannon, but he also lasted a lot longer than the adoptive father figure mentor usually lasts. Before he dies, he tells Jaster that he is a very unique individual. Really? What gave you that impression? Afterwards, Kassala does her best to console Jaster.
I'm staying here.
Jaster. What's with you? Snap out of it, Jaster.
Yeah, you're acting like your dad died a couple of hours ago in your arms or something. Before Raoul died, he gave Jaster a pendant which shows him a map of the Kuja Desert on Rosa. Jaster knows that something important is out there, so they decide to head out on an expedition. When you reach the center of the desert after proving your worth, you are greeted by the village of Johannesburg. Given that there are monsters roaming about this peaceful town, you can't even hear the sandstorms of the surrounding desert, and you were led here by an actual ghost, it doesn't take an ace detective to figure out something is going on here. We are told to search around the town to try and find hints of someone who has the same sweet face tattoo as Jaster. We eventually find Johanna, who has the coolest fucking character design in this entire game. But before she's willing to tell me anything, she demands a one-on-one fight between her and Jaster. Honestly, she'd be a tough fight even with the party. With just Jaster, she's almost impossible. Halfway through the fight, Jaster goes Super Saiyan. Seriously, just listen to that yell. I am not exaggerating. And I think the game wants you to feel more powerful as a result. But if there is a difference in strength, I don't feel it. Because I am downing shot after shot like it's fucking Mardi Gras, and then I still lose to Johanna after she took down my entire health bar in one move while she had one single pixel left. Gotta say, not really feeling all that powerful. After a second attempt, I was able to beat her and was rewarded with a plot dump. Get cozy, motherfuckers, this one's gonna take a while. It's not Sergei from Custom Robo bad, but it's still something you're gonna wanna put your feet up for. In the name of mercy, I'll give you the SparkNotes version. There used to be a fine, upstanding ruler of the galaxy named the Star King. Johanna is a descendant of the Star King, and Jaster is her son. She was the only thing keeping this town in existence, but it's more dramatic to fade away than to stick around and answer any questions your long-lost son would have, so she makes the village disappear. The exposition baton is passed over to Desert Claw, and he explains that he is Jaster's father.
It's not true. That's impossible!
Apparently he left Jaster with Raoul so he could go research Star King stuff. He believes that Jaster is the only one who could put an end to the war. Remember that war? I'm getting some point of no return vibes from the Gate to Eden, so I decided to do some more grinding. And I did enough monster hunts to get to the top of the leaderboard ranking and get the badass Desert Claw outfit. Part of me wants to say it was worth it, but another bigger part of me wants to shake you violently and yell at you to learn from my mistakes! Just a heads up here, the story quickly becomes what I believe is referred to in academic circles as a total clusterfuck from here on out. We finally make it to Eden. You know, the biodiverse planet? The planet that's covered entirely in... Alright, fine, you win this round, Rogue Galaxy. We dock at the capital city of Mariglen and are greeted by the Queen, Kasala's mother. The exposition baton is then handed to her, and she tells the tragic history of Mariglen. How an evil energy called Rune began to eat away at the city, and how it gave life to the lifeless. The source of the rune, Mother, rests on this planet. Mother, of course, being the main villain of this game, who is introduced 95% of the way into it, despite the fact that we've been fighting an entirely different group of Hey, who put this footage of Mega Man Legends on screen? In order to keep Mother and the rune from spreading to other planets, the Queen of Mariglen came to the only logical conclusion. She teleported her entire planet into a time-frozen alternate reality that could only be opened by someone getting 2 enormous tablets on 2 separate planets, getting 3 little statues separated on 3 other planets, and have the descendant of one specific bloodline solve the world's biggest 3D puzzle box. As I think we can all agree, we would all do. It is revealed in just a couple of lines that Rune corrupts people and turns them into monsters. So Mother is the source of all of the monsters in the galaxy. Now, Rune has been mentioned a couple of times in this story, but absolutely no context was given as to what it even is. It's just now being explained, in very vague terms I might add, what exactly it is. At no point in the game is it revealed that the monsters we've been fighting this entire time were people who were corrupted by Rune. A reveal like this feels like it should be a plot twist, but it's said with such nonchalance and with an as-you-know type attitude that I actually theorize that the writers meant to put it in earlier in the game to establish this, but just forgot. But if Rune corrupting people and turning them into monsters is such a ubiquitous thing, shouldn't we at some point have had some sort of moral dilemma about killing them? I mean, for fuck's sake, there's an entire industry with leaderboards about hunting these fucking things. And also, minor point, I know, but what is Rune? Like, physically. It's something that can corrupt living things and turn them into mindless beasts, but like, what is it? Is it a food? Is it a gas? Is it an ooze? What is it? And if Mother is the source of the rune and she's been trapped here on Eden for tens of thousands of years, how has she managed to corrupt other living things in another dimension? How did she even get through the gate? Come to think of it, how did Kasala come through the gate? She was born in Mariglen and then sent to the other galaxy via the robot for her own safety, Superman style, where she was then adopted by Captain Dorgan Goa. Either she was sent out before Eden was locked away, in which case she would have aged normally and Kasala should actually be a very distant descendant of the Queen, or she was sent out much later in Eden's isolation, which means the gate doesn't actually keep anything out or in. Perhaps she was sent out before the gate was made, and by going through the gate, Kasala was actually shot forward in time by many millennia. I don't know! I have to speculate about all of this because the game offers zero actual explanation about how the gate, time stop, Kasala's escape, Mother, or Rune even work. Enough about that. Thinking about it is just gonna make my brain hurt more than it usually does. Point is, since we're here, and we've just been told that Mother is the main bad guy, no for realsies trust us, we decide that we're gonna go take her down and save the world. But before we can face off against Mother, we are directed to a forest where Kasala must face a trial, presumably to make sure she's ready and test her resolve, because Lord knows all the shit up till now has just been a warm-up. Her trial is that she must defeat the corrupted, monstrous form of her father. Oh, hey look, we had one more Star Wars reference hiding in the bottom of the box. On his deathbed, the King of Mariglen says that there is only one thing that can defeat Mother, and that is a sword forged from Dragellum. Dragellum is created from our hearts, our strength of will, and the bonds we share. So, let's take the power of friendship and go stab a bitch with it, yeah! We make our way to a special valley that can induce visions, and each character sees a vision of home and their past, and are reminded what they're fighting for, and they forge their Dragellums. Alright people, let's wrap up your character development. Shouldn't take too long, you didn't have much to begin with. But man, let's take a moment to pour one out for Kasala though. Everyone else just had to watch a cutscene, but this poor girl had to kill her own father. Just a little uneven, that's all I'm saying. Eventually, we do create all of the Dragellum, and we forge Xeocycros.
What a beautiful sword.
I mean, I think it's one of the ugliest and gaudiest things I've ever seen in my life, but yeah, sure, to each their own. We have finally created the legendary sword that we've worked so long and hard to forge. It is the most powerful blade in the entire universe, and is the only thing known to man who can slay this ultimate evil. It is, however, weaker than the sword my toad barfed up on my shoe, so I'm gonna have to pass on it, but thank you though. This is the For Realsies last dungeon of the game. And it is long, and just linear corridors with nothing but fights to break up the monotony. At a certain point in the dungeon, I just stopped fighting and just went straight to running away. Yeah, I know, the name of the game is grinding, but at this point I just did not care. Eventually, we make our way to the final boss room.
Would you look at that?
This is unbelievable. Is this all Rune?
Sure, fuck it, why not? It's not like we've actually determined what Rune is, so yeah, it can be a bunch of lava if you want it to be. After defeating her first form, because you know there are going to be several, Mother reveals her true form, and Jaster goes Super Saiyan by being possessed by the spirit of the Star King. And the Star King reveals that Mother is actually a woman named Izarlbala, and you see, she used to be one of the most loyal followers, but eventually became corrupted by the power of Rune and... Okay, show of hands, who actually gives a shit about this backstory this late in the game? No one? Good, moving on. Star King stabs her in the face with the most powerful sword in the galaxy, and then she explodes. So we're finally done, and for fuck's sake.
So, that's the mother of all Rune. Oh my, how glorious, how magnificent!
You don't get to swoop in at the 11th hour and decide you're the main villain again. Thalcog and his cronies and his ship all get dragged down into the lava Rune mother thing and become a giant monstrous ship because... And since we don't have the Dragellum sword anymore, the Queen of Mariglen appears out of actually nowhere and gives us the Spirit Bomb from Dragon Ball Z. I'm not joking. Fucking listen to what she says.
This is the power of every single Mariglenden's heart as they pray for peace. They are also my thoughts for you, praying for your safety. This is the last Dragellum. Here, Ragnar. I want you to take this to my daughter. The Dragellum of Prayer.
That's the fucking Spirit Bomb. This game went from Star Wars to DBZ at some point, and I want off this ride. And hang on, if you could have done this the entire time, why didn't you kill Mother tens of thousands of years ago? Whatever. We used the Dragellum to form... Okay, I take it back what I said. This is the worst looking sword I've ever seen. If the story wasn't already enough of a mess, the gameplay has finally caught up to it. It's a series of one-on-one boss fights using characters that you've more than likely never used before, culminating in a fight against a big face using a bullshit weapon that can attack from anywhere and just downing health potions the whole time. Between all of the forms, I think we actually managed to touch on all of the worst aspects of this combat system. And even added a few new ones, because you don't have access to any of Jaster's abilities or weapons that you've been grinding for hours getting. You just have your one attack with a weapon you just got. God forbid a final boss be a culmination of everything you've learned and accomplished up to this point. Eventually we put it down and shit just starts exploding everywhere and we end up trapped, surrounded by lava/Rune. Luckily the Eagles, the Dorganarch, swoops in to save us at the last second. We're being bombarded by the explosions and all hope seems lost until the ship grows wings.
Whoa, what the heck is that?
Wings. Is this the power of the Rune too?
Sure! Why not? Hell! Maybe the Rune will give me a foot-long dick and a meat lover's pizza the size of the captain. Fuck it! We're playing Calvin Ball at this point. Rune is gone forever, apparently, and peace returns to Mariglen. Kasala says she doesn't want to stay on Eden because her place is back in the other galaxy. So we say our goodbyes and head back through the portal. At which point, Eden goes through its 10,000 years that it's remained in the other dimension all at once and reappears in our galaxy. At which point, we land back on it to see how different it is. Turns out, not at all. 10,000 years and no advances in technology. In fact, there's been so little change that they've been waiting for Kasala to show back up to retake the throne and rule. Apparently, in 10,000 years, no one bothers to try and introduce a new form of government or make a power grab and have put their faith that this one teenager who will probably show up in about 10 millennia and rule them. And Kasala didn't want to stay before when her mother was there, but now that she's long dead and would be stuck with a shit ton of responsibility, yeah, that sounds great, I'll stay now. Jaster realizes that it was Kasala's decision to stay, and they need to honor her wish. So they depart from Eden again. We're told that everyone else is dropped off back at their home planets. I guess Kasala was the only one who warranted a goodbye scene. But Jaster has decided to stay on for just a little bit longer. The captain has gone back to take a nap, but Jaster argues he deserves it. After all,
Look at the huge treasure he's earned. Galactic peace.
Yeah. Hey, whatever happened to that war? Man, that was a lot. And that's what this game is. A lot. There's so much meat to this game. Between its extensive story, the crowded armory of weapons that can be customized and fused together to create even more weapons, the expansive revelation flow, the bounties, the hunts for bigger boss monsters, Insectron, the factory, the ghost ship. Oh man, I didn't even talk about the ghost ship. In New Game Plus, a ghost ship appears flying through space that's just this huge, hard-as-nails optional dungeon that allows you to unlock some sweet prizes. Granted, I didn't touch on those last 3 things on my list, but if I had, I would have added so many hours into this game. If you're one of those people who demands that a game be worth your time in gameplay hours, I can guarantee you will find it here in Rogue Galaxy. Filling out the completionist checklist at the Galaxy Corporation alone is a Herculean task in and of itself. Now, I may have my issues with this game. I just spent the past way too long telling you about all of them, but no one in their right mind could possibly play through Rogue Galaxy and claim that a shit ton of love and passion didn't go into the creation of this game. The story is goofy, yes, but it is filled with fun and endearing characters, all of whom have great designs. You would recognize the main cast silhouettes at a glance. The world is so vibrant and creative. Yes, it borrowed heavily from Star Wars, but show me a sci-fi piece of media since 1977 that didn't in some way, shape, or form. Likewise with action anime and Dragon Ball. It implies a much bigger universe that is just begging to be explored. As I said in the beginning, of all the games in my collection, I struggled to think of one that I want a sequel to more, because the potential has only been slightly tapped. I would love to see another adventure in this world. Perhaps with a different cast, perhaps exploring corners of the universe that went untouched. Gosh, I wonder what I'm talking about. The combat definitely needs some ironing out, but I see a lot of really good ideas there, even if they didn't quite fit together in ideal ways. I think if the team was given a second chance to sand off some of the rougher edges, something really special could have been made here. But, as we don't live in a world in which that has any chance of happening, what we have now is a shiny game covered up by a whole lot of rust. I don't give numerical scores in any of my reviews, but Rogue Galaxy is a 7 out of 10 game at best. And that's a good thing. I've noticed a trend happening for some time now where if a game isn't perfect, that it's not worth your time. That if it doesn't check off these specific boxes, it may as well be a 0 out of 10. And that's completely ridiculous. There's never been any piece of media that has been completely flawless. Except for the Princess Bride movie. And that's not even my favorite movie! Flaws are what make things interesting. If every game were a perfect 10, then none of them would be. I've said in the past that I will make a video talking about my top 20 games of all time when I reach 1,000 subscribers. I'd like to keep my number 1 pick a secret until that video comes out. But when it does, you'll see that 10 out of 10s are not my style. As long as you enjoyed your time with a game, or if you walked away from the experience with something meaningful, then that time was certainly not wasted. And I enjoyed my time with Rogue Galaxy. I wouldn't have spent over a year trying to figure out how to word my feelings about it if I didn't care about it. As much as I complained about grinding, it was a nice thing to catch up on my podcasts with. It has an all-star cast. I didn't mention this before, but this game is chock full of all of the best voice actors in the business. And the story, while fairly ridiculous, if you couldn't tell, is also very riffable. I recommend experiencing it in some way, whether it be playing it or watching a Let's Play. I think we need games like Rogue Galaxy. Because if we didn't have games that are willing to push their boundaries and try new things, and maybe even fail spectacularly, then the galaxy would be a much more boring place indeed. And done! From the moment I started capturing footage to the moment I posted it, it has been over a year since I started working on this video. After several rewrites and a lot of head bashing on walls, I think it turned out pretty well, if I do say so myself. If you liked this video and you'd like to see more of it, I'd really appreciate it if you liked, commented, and subscribed. I suck at self-promotion, so any sharing you can do would be super appreciated. And hey, since you're in the neighborhood, why not also head over to my Twitch, where I'm making my way through every single game in my collection and on my to-buy list. Anyway, I hope you're having a good day. And if you're not, I hope it gets better. Toodles!